everybody. Happy Wednesday, I think it is. Yeah, so I wanted to start things off. What the heck did we just watch?
What did we just watch?
Yeah, so what we just watched was SEO the movie. Who here has seen SEO the movie? Raise your hand if you don't mind. Okay, so a few people, that's excellent. So it was a US-based film that talked about the history of search engine optimization, specifically in the US, and we'll talk more about that and how that could be translated to other countries. But it's a film on the history of search, where it was, where it is now, and where it's going.
Awesome. And Rand, you're one of the stars of the film.
I don't know if stars of the film quite qualifies. Maybe I was one of several folks that John and the producers interviewed for this movie. And yeah, it's very cool to sort of see the perspective, right? Having lived through it and then reflecting and watching this film and getting to hear how other people in our field felt about the growth of search and how, Google went from this tiny little startup, right, in Silicon Valley to world-dominating behemoth. I mean, Google is, 97% of market share in Portugal and most of the rest of Europe. And so the early days of SEO really shaped the engine.
Yeah, so why do this film? I mean, thinking about, SEO is kind of one of the earliest ways of marketing on the internet. But so why do this film now? Because it seems like it's the oldest type of marketing monetization, but it's also the thing that keeps evolving all the time. And so why do the film and why do it now?
Yeah, so SEO's evolved a lot over the years. It's still the best channel, one of the best channels for marketing your business online. But when it started out, it wasn't really socially acceptable by major corporations. Yeah. And it was a lot of black hat, a lot of affiliate. If you don't know what black hat means, that means it basically was kind of below the table stuff, people gaming the system. It's evolved now into a major corporate practice that drives millions of visitors a month for many companies. So the film's about the transition of SEO into the field that it is now, and then really where the future is going, which it's evolving so fast, and I can't wait to hear Rand talk a bit about this as well. So we wanted to kind of show that transition.
So what was the process like? So when you're thinking about the history and the present and the future of SEO and everything like that, how did you guys pick the people in the film? And 'cause this is about like a 40-minute film or so, is that right?
40 minutes, film made by my company. It cost $15,000 total to make, which is not much when you consider how much advertising we do. The people in the film are the biggest people in search. Rand is one of the biggest influencers in SEO. There's also Barry Schwartz, who's in the film, Danny Sullivan. These are people in the United States who are very, very well known. So to get them all together and talk about where it's been and where it's going, that was kind of the purpose there.
Cool. So Rand, talk a bit more about your story with Mozs, and talk a little bit more about the company's origins, and what are you guys doing now, and how does it fit into this ever-changing landscape?
Yeah. So for those of you who might not know, and I think John covered this a little bit in the film, but I dropped out of college, and I started Mozs with my mom. So I think mom and son founders is like the least likely venture capital investment on the planet, but we managed that one. And yeah, Mozs started originally as a blog and then became a software company and eventually became one of the biggest software companies and most invested in the SEO field. And we were, John, to your point, SEO was a sketchy practice, right? It was spam, it was mystery, it was secretive. And so when we were, trying to build a reputation, trying to build a company in 2006, 2007, a lot of people wouldn't talk to us. Even in 2012, when I went to Silicon Valley for that venture round, a lot of people were like, well, I don't know, is SEO really a thing? People really going to invest in that? It seems pretty spammy to me. And so I think that to see how far the practice has come, how accepted it's been, has been fairly remarkable. And Mozs is certainly a big part of that journey, right? We've benefited from the fact that SEO went from a niche marketing practice to an, oh my God, everyone has to do it.
And when was that inflection point? I'm kind of curious. It seems like every channel has that. Whether it's Twitter or Facebook or SEO. I mean, we're starting to see it more with AI and VR these days too. But like, what was it that actually convinced people that this was actually something worth investing in and something that's actually going to work and it's not just a bunch of spammy kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, so the biggest points for me were Google going public. That was a big one. I think Google's sort of dominance, absolute dominance in search by about 2011, 2012. And then SEO, John, maybe you'll disagree with me. I don't think it ever had a one-time, everything after this point is acceptable in SEO and everything before it was unacceptable. I think it's been a very slow, gradual adoption. Eventually Fortune 500 started building out SEO teams. Eventually major agencies, right, the big 5 ad agencies all had SEO components. It was never an overnight change.
I have some clients who get 20 million visitors a month, right? You can't ignore that. When you're getting 20 million visitors a month from SEO, then you've got to invest in software. You've got to think about what your conversion rates look like there. You want to think about how can I get more of this drug that is SEO marketing, right? But to Rand's point, I'd say it's about 60-70% accepted at this point, and then the other 30%, people are still very, very skeptical. So.
Yeah, I bet if we walk 2 buildings over, there's someone talking smack about SEO like right now.
Yeah.
Let's go find them. But yeah, so on that note, I'm kind of curious. So I sat in on a panel yesterday, just attending, and it was with the CMO of Ryanair, and he was talking about they don't actually spend a single dollar on Google. And so I'm kind of curious, you see big brands like that are finding other ways of marketing, and they're still driving, I think it's like 2.5 million visits, I think it was a day. So, I mean, why is SEO still relevant in an era that seems, at least from the broader landscape of hype, more dominated by social?
Yeah, so, I was on stage here, a few hours ago, showing some data about the distribution of where traffic comes from on the web. And I believe, so the number one referrer of web traffic is Google, and it's at 62%. Right? And then the next one down is Facebook at like 12 or 13%, right? So we're talking about Google is just orders, vastly, vastly bigger in terms of a traffic driver. And more importantly, I think, is when you look at the long tail of the web, right? The millions, hundreds of millions of websites that exist, Google is the one sending traffic to all of these folks. Facebook's traffic delivery is all concentrated up here. So no surprise if you're at the New York Times and you get a lot of your traffic from Facebook and you spend a lot of your time on Facebook, you think Facebook must be the dominant thing. That's the big story. But reality is, you know what? Everybody else, all of us, have to play in a Google world.
And I'd just like to comment on that real quick. I mean, everybody's talking about social. They're talking about AI. They're talking about these new, which are growing channels. We know these are growing channels. But what matters right now to your business? Well, the 2 best ways are Google organic search and Google AdWords. That's where, I mean, it's getting more competitive, and we can touch on that a bit. But social is, people look at that as the hot button and the newest trend. But the conversion rates in a lot of cases really aren't there for businesses. The revenue, and it all comes down to money, right? And leads or e-commerce or branding or news if you're a news site. Social is great for news sites. It's great for branding sites. But is it that great for e-commerce? Is it that great for lead generation? In many cases, it's not. So
you guys just mentioned both the relevancy of Google, but then there's of course still Bing. It's still around. It's much smaller market share, but I'm kind of curious, what does that look like when you have these 2 major search engines? Like, is it still relevant, or can it be a one player takes all when it comes to search? And what's the problem when you have a company like Google that has almost a monopoly on this massive industry?
Yeah, so it's pretty fascinating. So in the United States, Google has done a wonderful job. Google, by the way, is the second largest lobbying organization in the US. So for those of you who are European, lobbying means bribing politicians. And in our country, that is legal. I don't know why, but it is. So Google is one of the biggest lobbyers, and one of the things that they do to help make sure that they're not regulated as a monopoly, which you can see they are in the EU, right? The EU just cracked down on Google a couple of times, specifically around local results and around shopping results. But in the US, they haven't been, and that is because Google spends so much time and energy, including getting people like ComScore to tell Congress, to tell the United States government that Bing and Google are both quite big. They say, you know, Bing has 35% market share. They don't have anywhere close to that, but it's in Google's best interest to make it look to the regulators like they do. So that is one of the reasons you see this ongoing narrative, right, media narrative of, oh, Google and Bing are warring against each other. In fact, it really has been a one market takes all. The most interesting thing from the data that we saw is that Google web search is rivaled by one other search engine.
What's that?
Google image search.
Whoa, Google.
Google image search is
YouTube.
like crazy. Yeah, so YouTube is, I think, number 3 behind. So it's Google Web, Google Images, then YouTube, and then like Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. You do have another major competitor, to be fair, which is Baidu in China.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good point. So I want to ask one other quick question on just thinking about this overall landscape that we have now, and then I want to kind of jump into kind of some future-looking trends here. But on that note, I'm kind of curious, because when we're thinking about these companies, and I don't want to get too into the weeds on the regulatory side of things, but it's interesting, as we've seen over the past, even over the past two or 3 weeks with congressional hearings about Russia and fake news and bots and whatnot, it seems like on a broader scale, a lot of regulators and a lot of politicians don't even understand how these companies work. And so what does that mean when you have the companies that are supposed to be protecting consumers against like fake news or bad advertising or whatnot that don't understand how to regulate or how not to regulate these companies? What does it look like from your perspective? Is that a good thing to have a Wild West, or is it a bad thing?
Let's see. The good is it leaves a lot of room for innovation, and it leaves a lot of space to be creative without having to worry about rules. The bad is it has potentially horrifying and negative side effects on society, right? And I think that the rise of filter bubbles in social media and in search have correlated so neatly with the divisiveness of across the political spectrum, right? So you know, they look at sort of the average views of people. In the US, we only have two major parties, but you know, they look at the views and they were much more overlapped in the 90s. And then, you know, rise of Facebook, rise of Google, they've drifted much further apart. So dangerous externalities happen in unregulated environments, but so too does a lot of innovation.
I'd comment on that real quick. I mean, if you want to start a business in the United States, start a consulting company where you're basically trying to help people have the correct, you know, regulations in place as our government evolves. I mean, I've actually looked into this. I'm an opportunist as a business idea, and it's just the Wild West out there, which has made it interesting and fun in a lot of ways. But we need to catch up, I believe.
So I want to step you guys there for a quick second. I want to talk about the future of SEO. I think there's another clip that if we could show that for a quick second, that would be great.
Has a very bright future for at least the next 3 or 4 years. I think the future after that is more uncertain. And the biggest risk that I see to this field is that search volume and the possibility of being in front of searchers diminishes dramatically because of smart assistants and voice search.
There it is.
There
the
it
future,
is.
straight from the horse's mouth.
Exactly. Yeah, and so on that note, one of the things I've personally been really curious about over the last 6 months to a year or so is actually voice search, which is, how does that change? Because, I mean, we've seen this whole process built out, and you have Google doing all its updates, but you know, everyone's gotten used to Googling certain things, right? Popping in a few keywords or a sentence. But when it comes to voice, talking to Alexa or Google, I mean, there are more apps even or skills on these devices that I even know exist. And I'm supposed to be writing about this stuff. But like, and so the thing with the consumer, maybe there's the Campbell's soup skill in Alexa, but there's, what's another soup brand? I don't know. But talk about that though. Like, what does it look like? What's the future of search when it comes to a marketer trying to figure out how do they build a voice skill, and how do you build it for something where the consumer doesn't even know how to look for it in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, my perspective is voice search doesn't hurt SEO at all. Not, like, barely changes it. Voice answers change it a lot, right? Because a voice answer, you only get one answer. There's not 10 results or, you know, a bunch of different features that you can look at. You just get that one answer. That makes for a market where, in many cases, a single brand, a single company is absolutely dominant. And in my opinion, the people who are adopting voice answers, voice skills, apps today are the ones who are going to be dominant in the future. I think this is it's scary because it's winner takes all. It's also a great time to get into it because you can be that winner right now. 5 years from now, good luck. As far as voice assistants and skills go, I do believe, and John and I were talking about this, right? I do believe that is going to be a fundamentally different function than what we've classically done with web search. And instead of replacing search, it's going to be in addition to. We do other things with voice search and voice answers and AI and smart assistants than what we do with Google. What interior designer should I use for my new office space? Right? I think those are two different things.
Yeah, I think right now we're finding ways to optimize for voice search. We're finding ways to optimize for Google Assistant. We're finding ways to optimize for Siri. We're finding ways to optimize for Alexa, right? Those are kind of the three things to think about. Right now, voice search, it's only 20% of mobile search, yet it's something that people are focusing on so heavily, and they want to change and adopt all of their strategies as a result of it. But as business owners, think about it yourself. Where's the actual traffic right now? And we always want to think ahead, and that's smart to do, but it's still very small. It's going to grow exponentially over the years, something to keep an eye on. It's all about winning the game of online, finding ways to get involved in these places where your customers are spending time, extracting them to your website or whatever type of conversion you're looking for and making it happen.
That's actually a really important point. So the one thing that I think is a terrible, terrible idea is building your home base on the web on someone else's platform.
Yep.
I think that's crazy. Why would you make your primary blog on Medium? Great distribution channel,
yeah.
But why would you put all your content there and not on your own website as well? Why would you ever make YouTube your home base, or Facebook, or an app that is controlled by Google and Apple, right? That everything should be about driving back to a channel you own.
Yeah, and just real quick, so last week, Facebook is testing not showing page posts in the feed.
Yeah.
Right? So I have a page, it's got like 25,000 people, some people like it. They won't see any updates that I do. I'm going to have to pay to advertise that. So when you're on somebody else's platform, you lose that traffic that you might have built up from your brand. So lots of things to think about as you're setting your digital strategy for the future.
Yep.
Well, we could keep going, but unfortunately we're out of time. So thanks to you both.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.